What's up, guys? Zach Reininger, and today I want to potentially stir the pot a little bit. This video may fire some people up, no pun intended, with what we're going to talk about today. And today we're going to talk about tankless water heaters. This is something that I continue to hear a lot about, a lot of questions from people that are interested in it. There are a lot of brands who have gone to this standard. And I am going to run through why I think that's a terrible decision. And I think it's going to come back to bite them. And I think that you will see a lot of brands going away from them, possibly this year, maybe at model change. But let's dive into it. Why do I think that tankless water heaters are a bad idea for the majority of RVers, especially towable RVs? So the first thing that you have to think about with a tankless water heater is a standard water heater is gas and electric. Has a tank anywhere from 6 to 12 gallons that holds hot water. That's a regular water heater. Then you have a tankless water heater, which, as the name suggests, it's tankless, right? And the pitch on it is that, hey, it's endless hot water. You're going to have all the hot showers. It's going to be amazing. All these things. It's so much more efficient than a regular water heater is. But that's not telling you the whole story. And the bigger issue, the first issue, I guess I should say, that I see with this is the fact of there's no electric option. It is gas only. Well, why is that a problem? Well, when you stay in campgrounds, included in your nightly rent rate typically is electric. So you're say you're paying $40 a night, $50 a night, $80 a night, whatever it is. That includes water and electric. So your electric is already paid for that night. And in a traditional water heater, you have an electric option. In a tankless water heater, you don't. So when you are camping in campgrounds, which the majority of owners do camp in campgrounds, you are now forced to burn through your propane in order to have hot water, whether that's washing dishes, whether that's using the outside kitchens, or taking these endless showers that you think are going to be so wonderful. Sounds great in theory until you're having to start paying for all of that propane use versus using the electric that you're already paying for. It's just not economical for you. So that's a big dilemma in my opinion right there. That's one that jumps out at me of why I don't like that option. And you're going to burn a lot of propane using that. So it's a problem for customers that I don't think they realize until they're out there using it. The other issue that I see out there has to do with winterization. And you have to winterize a tankless water heater a little bit different. You got to make sure that you're very intentional about it. You can do it. It's not overly challenging, but most people don't. And if you don't winterize that correctly, you're going to have a tankless water heater that is leaking everywhere. And the bigger problem, other than just winterization, is in a lot of places, you can camp year round. It might be cold in certain areas in the South and things like that, but you might have 3 weeks of amazing weather in the winter and it's perfect camping time and you can go out and camp. And maybe you've got a couple trips planned for 2 weeks from now and it's sitting outside or at storage or wherever it might be. And what happens when an ice storm comes through or a cold front or the most recent polar vortex that comes down? If you're not near your camper and able to go out and drain that and blow out the lines, you're going to come back to a broken tankless water heater. And when that happens, you put water into that and you connect water to your camper, you're going to have water pouring everywhere out of that tankless water heater. And I think, yes, can you winterize it? Yes. Can you mitigate that problem? Of course you can. But I don't know that everyone does. And I've seen time and time and time again as I visit dealers and look at service departments and talk to people where they will have dozens of units in the service area after weird weather has come through where they're replacing tankless water heaters because it just happens. And then I think about too, if you guys remember, we're in Texas and 2021, we had snowpocalypse, right? The Texas grid failed. And in our house, we lost power for 7 days. We left our house. We had a baby at the time. And I asked my brother to come check our house, make sure, dripping all my faucets and doing all the right things. Asked him to go check and make sure that my faucets were still dripping. And he called me about 20 minutes later and he's like, well, do you want the good news or the bad news? I was like, what's the good news? And he says, I think you're going to get that renovation that you guys were talking about. It's like, okay, what's the bad news? He said, you have water coming out your garage. And what had happened was we have a tankless water system in our attic. And as I'm dripping all the faucets and doing all these things, I forgot a very critical thing. And that is that a tankless water heater needs power in order to turn the motor on in order for it to work and stay warm. And a residential tankless water heater is completely different than an RV water heater, but I'm going somewhere. And what happened was that the water was coming into it. It sat there not working and it exploded. And then the water ran in our attic, down all of our headers, down all of our walls for 2 days. And it destroyed the house. And so that same thing can happen if maybe you have it out on some property, maybe you're out of town and you have water hooked up to it, city water, and a cold front comes through and that thing freezes. What if you can't get to it for 2 days and you've just got city water just pushing through that thing? It's going to get inside your unit. You're going to have a much bigger problem on your hands. And so I think that is something that is not being discussed enough. And if you have a tankless water heater, I think that you need to be aware of how to manage that and how to winterize that so that you don't run into problems. The other thing that you can run into is low water pressure. So if you're in a campground, some campgrounds have high water pressure. That's why you buy the water pressure regulators. But what if there's a ton of people camping in that campground that weekend and you have low water pressure, things like this can happen. Well, if you have too low of water pressure, it won't work at all. It has something inside there called a check valve, and it's checking the flow of water, and it has to have a certain amount of gallons per minute of water pressure coming through there, or it won't turn on because it needs to protect its own heating element. And so if you have too low of water pressure, you're not going to get any hot water. That's a problem too. You also get what's called cold water gapping. And what that means is you have long periods of gaps of cold water in your lines before you get hot water. Because in a tankless water heater system, it has to stay on for it to continue to produce hot water. So if you're washing dishes, you have to turn on the hot water, let it run until you get hot water there, and then you have to continue to let it run or you will lose hot water because as soon as you shut that off, it stops heating. So if you come back 2 minutes later, you have to start that process all over again. And each time you do that, that's more and more water that gets wasted. And that can happen in your showers as well. So if you take a traditional RV shower where you close the head off and soap up and then rinse off, you're going to be rinsing off in cold water unless you keep that hot water running the entire time, which again means you're using a lot more water and you're using a lot more propane in order to have those lovely long showers. So with that being said too, think about it for boondocking. If you're out dry camping, what's the number one limiter of how long you can go dry camping for? Water. You run out of fresh water, you got to figure it out. You got to have water. And so if you don't have water, you're stuck. Well, if you're telling me I have a tankless water heater and I use a significantly more amount of water with a tankless water heater than I do a regular water heater, I'm going to burn through that fresh water tank that I have a lot faster than I would a traditional gas electric water heater. And then even if you're in a campground, you're going to burn through a lot more water that way, which means you're going to fill your gray tank a lot faster and you're going to have to be dumping your tanks a lot more often. So for boondocking, it doesn't make a lot of sense either for bigger units where you have lots of water lines and you're having to run that water for a long time to get it from the water heater all the way back to the shower and that cold water gapping. You will chew through a lot more water than you would have with a traditional water heater with gas and electric. So there's quite a few different things that I think make these water heaters less than ideal for RVers. I'm certainly hopeful that as technology develops and continues to get better and better, that maybe they have some other stuff that comes out. But at Flagstaff and Rockwood, we're very, very particular about the components that we put into our units and how you're going to use them. And will they actually make your experience better? And I think a lot of people get really hung up on these endless showers, and that sounds so great. But I think the trade-offs outweigh the benefits of a nice long shower, in my personal opinion. And now that being said, I also want to be fully transparent here because we have two models right now that we are actually using tankless water heater in. I know, crazy, right? In our ePro and GeoPro, our 12S and our 14D, we are using a tankless water system in there. And the reason that we're doing that is because these units are so small that the tankless water heater actually, and they have like the rear flip up door where the kitchen is, and you have your sink is right there, and then a little shower attachment that you can put on it and hang on the door, and you're showering outside. So the majority of our customers with that particular floor plan, both of those, they're most likely not really going to campgrounds where they're going to sacrifice that electric option that they had. They're most likely going to be getting off grid and going and doing things. And I know I just said it's not great for boondocking, but hear me out. When you have a small unit like that, that water heater actually sits almost right next to your sink, which is the only water source that you have right there. So you're not going to get the cold water gapping. It's not a big issue to have to run that for a long time to keep that hot water coming through. And typically, if you're showering outside behind a little bit of a curtain, you're not really looking for that, hey, I want to take a glorious 20-minute hot shower out here. You're just looking to rinse off, get wet, clean up, wash your dishes, and get back to outdoors. And based upon any feedback that we get with that, if people love it, if they don't, we'll adjust. But for bigger units and most people, my personal opinion is that I don't know that it makes sense to do it. And I think that there are a lot of manufacturers who jumped the gun on this and went to it as standard. And I think they're paying the price right now. You can see it in the forums. You can see it in the feedback. People are having problems. They're frustrated. And I think a lot of people got starry-eyed with the idea of tankless water heater, endless showers. Like, it sounds really good. But in this particular application, I just don't believe in it personally for bigger units. Let me know what you guys think. Maybe you disagree with me. Maybe you have one and you love it and you don't have these problems. And tell us about it. Put it in the comments. Let me know what you think. What are your experiences with it? But I felt compelled to talk about this because there's so many questions out there and there's so many products that have gone to this, and people get excited and they want it. And I wanted to be able to use it as an opportunity to try and educate you of, not that it's all terrible, but if you want to make that decision, I want you to know that there are other trade-offs that come along with it. Let me know what you guys think. I appreciate you for watching. And as always, I love you. Thanks for being here. See ya.